respecting all of you here on time. I know we've got a total of about 22 in the Academy now, so we're very excited about that. Hello, everyone. So I think most of you were here for our session 1 in October. We do have some who are joining us for the first time. So if you are new, we welcome you. Just want to point out we have a number of folks on the Zoom as well. We've got John Reyes from NCEA, who's kind of in the command center, running the PowerPoint and running breakout rooms and all of that. So we're excited to have Dr. John Reyes with us. We've got Kathy Mears, our interim president CEO, with us, obviously blessed by her presence. And then we have a couple of coaches. We have Val Mara from the Diocese of Hartford, who is with us. And I believe I saw Tim McNiff joining us as well. And I don't know if I finally saw him or not, but Tim McNiff, there he is. Hello, Timothy. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening. Good to be with you.
Good. And I think we also had Tiffany Wilbur with us from FACS Education Solutions. FACS is a wonderful partner of ours in the New Leaders Academy. And so great to have Tiffany here with us as well. Thank you all for being here. We are also blessed to have Leisha Reese with us. And so Leisha is the superintendent of schools in the Diocese of Raleigh in North Carolina. She leads 29 parish and diocesan schools in Eastern North Carolina. She is relatively new in that role. She formerly served as the associate superintendent in the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston in Texas. And she's also served as a principal of 2 Catholic schools in Memphis, Tennessee. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Leisha. So Leisha, take it away. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here tonight. And I'm excited to be a part of the learning for our leaders in Catholic schools. So without further ado, we will get started with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. May you have the grace and wisdom to act kindly, learning to distinguish between what is personal and what is not. May you be hospitable to criticism. May you never put yourself at the center of things. May you act not from arrogance, but out of service. May you work on yourself, building up and refining the ways of your mind. May those who work for you know you see and respect them. May you learn to cultivate the art of presence in order to engage with those who meet you. When someone fails or disappoints you, may the graciousness with which you engage be their stairway to renewal and refinement. May you treasure the gifts of the mind through reading and creative thinking, so that you continue as a servant of the refreshment from the old, and you never become functionary. May you know the wisdom of deep listening, the healing of wholesome words, the encouragement of the appreciative gaze, the decorum of held dignity, the springtime edge of the bleak question. May you have a mind that loves frontiers, so that you can evoke the bright fields that lie beyond the view of the regular eye. May you have good friends to mirror your blind spots. May leadership be for you a true adventure of growth. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. So let's begin our time together with a session 1 recap. If you'll recall, we started our time discussing the 7 leadership roles of a Catholic school principal. Then we examined how to develop and foster a culture for learning in your role as lead learner. And we ended with the role of principal as steward in terms of cash flow. You also engaged in some asynchronous tasks, which included root beliefs and norms activity, and then examined how to develop and foster a culture for learning in your role as lead learner. We'll dive into the cash flow assignment a little bit later on tonight. So right now, we'll go ahead and we're going to break out into a breakout room, and we're going to discuss the following questions while you're there. Where are you in the process? What successes have you experienced? And what challenges are you encountering?
All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was a good opportunity to share a little bit about where you're at in the process, and how you've had a chance to sort of take those core concepts and things from the first session, use those asynchronous activities and tools and resources to support your leadership. So before we go on for today, I want to take a quick moment and just talk a little bit about LinkSpring and the learning cycles. Right. So we've got this additional resources, this additional site that builds on the content that we're providing through these live sessions. Now, the last thing that we want from these learning cycles is to put you in this condition. All right. So we know we have a lot of demands on your leadership. There's a lot of things going on, especially now. Right. And so the intent for these learning cycles is really to move you from this to this. Right? We want to make sure you guys are feeling confident and competent in being a champion for the kids and families you serve. And the learning cycles help deepen and extend the learning that we're providing through the live sessions, through the coaching, and through the PLN pieces. So I want to talk a little bit about how LinkSpring is designed, how that helps support our learning throughout this process, and really how it helps extend and expand the impact of your leadership. So our partnership with Link is new this year. So this is a very new initiative. And actually, you guys are the very first group of Catholic educators that we're working with on this platform. The LinkSpring platform is built on this idea of generativity. Right? And so it comes from research from Dr. Arnitha Ball. And the idea here is that adult learners learn best when they have a chance to reflect, to tinker, and to grow. Right? And so these opportunities for shared learning through live sessions, through small groups, through breakouts, all those things are valuable. But we move from being exposed to those skills and competence to really embedding them when we get the chance to reflect and tinker and grow. And so we see these cycles as a way for you to get some job embedded bite-sized pieces to allow you to take those core concepts. So when we talk about being a lead learner, when we talk about a culture of teaching for learning, when we talk about being stewards of our schools, that we can break that in to say, okay, well, here's what it actually looks like at the ground level. So a couple of tips here just to share with you in terms of how you can use these learning cycles within our work here in the New Leaders Academy. Okay. And the first one here is that we see these learning cycles as a way to translate key ideas into practical steps. Okay, we're going to take some time to really talk about culture today. And so our challenge is going to be great, right? We're learning about culture, but how do I fit this into weekly faculty meetings or bi-weekly faculty meetings or observations? Well, the whole idea with the learning cycles is they take those concepts and say, well, here's what it looks like in practice. Here are the tools and resources and scaffolds that help you translate your learning into practice. The learning cycles also help you maximize what goes on in the live sessions and the coaching and the PLNs, right? So now we're walking through specific exercises and tools that then help you connect what you're doing in your schools, in your communities, in your classrooms to what we talk about here, what we discuss here. And that really helps create common language to learn from and with each other. All right, we're Catholic school leaders across the nation serving a variety of communities. We've got diverse populations that we serve. And what these learning cycles allow us to do is to have a common experience and a common language. So when we talk about school culture and root beliefs and how those pieces help us create transformation in our schools, and when we talk about operational vitality and stewardship, this gives us the common lens and the common framework so that we can learn from and learn with each other. So how do we make it manageable? How do these learning cycles help support our leadership? So we want to leave you with 2 tips, and hopefully these are things that as you're going through the activities today, that yes, we're asking you to participate in them deeply, but also we're saying, here are things that you can do as a leader to deepen and create that culture of learning and transformation in your school. The first thing that we're going to challenge you to do or sort of recommend in terms of how you use these learning cycles is to engage others in the process. Yes, you got access to the learning cycles. You can see the resources, the supplementals, the exemplars, but bring other people to the process. Right? So when you see that cash flow analysis, when you see the operational vitality audit, don't make that a one-person job. Make that a shared piece that you can use in your discussions, in your collaboration. So when you're meeting with your bookkeeper or your secretary or office manager, and you're working through finding out what has my enrollment been? What have we done in terms of fundraising? What are we planning for this year? Make that a shared initiative. Because yes, this is in many parts a way to help you deepen your learning for this particular program, but those are also critical pieces that will allow you to extend your impact as a leader. So bring other people into the process, bring other people up into that balcony of leadership. And finally, that second tip in terms of effectively using these learning cycles are to incorporate tools into faculty and staff collaboration. You want to talk root beliefs? Fantastic. Make it a collaborative piece. Have your teachers and your faculty and your staff have parents help with that process of saying, what is important to us? What do we believe about education? Right? What matters to us? We'll talk a little bit about PLCs today, and Alicia's going to walk us through that. And so when we go back to our schools and really assess, well, hey, if we're talking about PLCs, do we have a PLC? Bring other people into that process, especially if you've got folks with that institutional knowledge. So incorporate that, make that part of your faculty meetings, make that part of your Zoom calls, make that part of the work that you do with and to support teachers. So I'm going to leave this here for you. And if you have any questions or any issues that you're running into with the platform, or you're like, hey, I'm just trying to get my head around this, don't hesitate to reach out to your coaches who have been fantastic resources. Don't be afraid to reach out to your colleagues, and definitely don't be afraid to reach out to us here at NCEA. I'm going to drop my email address in the chat box. A couple of you have gotten email messages from me, but if you need help specifically with the LinkSpring platform, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here for you. These resources are really here to make sure that you've got all the gadgets and gizmos to help extend the impact of your leadership. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about how LinkSpring is going to build on the content for tonight's session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia.
Thanks, John. So many of you will remember in your last session, you discussed the 7 images of leadership. And tonight we're going to focus on the 3 that are highlighted here: agent of change, instructional leader, and lead learner. Many of you know that moving an organization through change can be a very difficult proposition. It's not easy. And often you have kind of 2 camps of people, the ones who are very opposed to the change, and then ones who are excited about the change. And normally, the people who are very resistant to that change are the ones who make their opinions known the loudest. And so one of the things that as a principal and a leader that you'll be responsible for is moving your organization through that, dealing with the naysayers who are kind of stuck in that place, and then providing the framework that's needed to actually realize the dream of the change that you want to see happen. So you have to, again, work through that resistance and create a feasible framework to enact the change in the face of those ambiguities and uncertainties, all the while listening to your constituents and listening to their feedback so that you can tweak and make changes as you go. So we're going to also talk a little bit about your role as lead learner. It's essential for you to see yourself as the lead learner. And this doesn't mean that you know everything and that you have all the answers. It really means that you believe that your job is to ensure that A, there's good teaching and learning taking place routinely in classrooms and within your school, that you're engaging in the curriculum, instruction, assessment, and pedagogy that's taking place in the classroom every day, and that you are acting as a catalyst for growth. You're giving that feedback, you're engaging, encouraging, initiating, being with your principal, being with your faculty and your students so that they are growing. Jesus was often called a teacher, which he surely was. He was called to be a teacher of teachers. He not only taught his disciples, but he also gave them tools through the Holy Spirit and sent them forth to teach the whole world his gospel message. So as principal, your job too is to empower your teachers and give them tools to work with their students, to work with with the parents and families, and to provide structures for them to be highly effective in the work that they do. And so just as Jesus was also a principal, you must be a principal who is teaching your teachers, supporting, encouraging, and helping them to improve. So let's take a moment to reflect. Jot down your thoughts and responses on a piece of paper, and then we'll revisit this again kind of later in the presentation. So think about a time where you were part of a change initiative. Take a moment to think about that and jot down kind of the framework of the initiative. So what was the initiative? What were the results? So was it successful? Did it improve or impact the entire school, a classroom? Was it trying to make change in a school system? What were the results of the change initiative? And from your perspective, what were the drivers of the change? The policy and associated strategies to bring about the change. What was the purpose? Why were they doing that? So as we keep those pieces in the back of our mind, and we again we'll address those as we move through later in the presentation. I want you to think about being a balanced leader. How do you minimize the counterproductive actions within your organization or school, and specialize in the generative actions that are going to yield and lead to positive results? So let's talk about the why for a little bit. Our first why or purpose of our time together tonight will be to explore the role of the instructional leader and change agent. And then we'll talk about identifying the principal's role with tuition collection. So as we think about the role of instructional leader and change agent, we talked about kind of what those drivers were to realize the growth and the change that we'd like to see. So a driver is a policy that's intended to have a positive impact on student learning and designed to affect positive whole system reform. There are right drivers and wrong drivers. A wrong driver is a deliberate policy force that has little chance of achieving desired effects, while a right driver is a deliberate policy that will have a better measurable result for students. So I think we are going to, John just dropped a link into the chat box, and you're going to use this link. We're going to kind of talk about the different types of drivers. So you're going to read that piece, and we'll take about 5 to 7 minutes to do that. And then we'll come back on the other side and we'll talk about what you've learned.
And just know that this piece is also on LinkSpring. So if you sign into LinkSpring and check out the cycle 2, you'll see it under the additional resources there.
Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to read over the Drivers for Growth article that was included in the chat. So as we come back, I want you to think about the reflection that we did earlier. Think about that change initiative that you were a part of. How might the initiative been different if Fullan's Right drivers had been employed? think about whether or not it was accountability that was driving the change, top down. Everyone's just expected to do it. Was it individualistic solutions instead of collaboration? Was technology the driver instead of pedagogy? Were there fragmented strategies instead of systemness? Was capacity being built throughout the experience of the change? So what we know is that the right drivers work because they are directly associated with changing systems and cultures. It's important to note that the 4 wrong drivers are not forever wrong, but rather should be used in service of the right drivers. The real driver is culture. It's important to remember that we're working to shift culture, which is different from just creating a change. We can utilize those drivers to assist us in this work. And so how do we do that? So the facilitation of that process for adult learning, right? The learning is understanding the change and working through what needs to be done in order to get there. So it's important for the principal to engage the staff in collective inquiry and to build capacity. This includes protecting faculty collaboration time to focus on student learning. Build shared understanding by engaging in collaborative activities. Creating and implementing collective commitments and collecting and responding to classroom evidence of impact on student learning. It's important to also think about what ways that this might already be occurring in your school. What times already exist where faculty might be collaborating or their collaborative activities, where people have already existing collective commitments and they're responding to classroom evidence and working on student learning. Those existing systems can be improved and leveraged, and which means not necessarily adding something else, but improving what's already existing. The principal also fosters a culture for learning and maintains a focus on student learning. That includes aligning professional learning and programs to the school's focus, cultivating a safe collaborative environment through the establishment of norms and protocols, and managing the resistance. And so in that aligning of the professional learning and the programs, it's important to use the data to look at those points and decide where that's going to drive the professional learning. Just like in a classroom, teachers are looking at student performance and thinking about, okay, what type of development do I need for them? Cultivating a safe collaborative environment through the establishment of norms really does give, and protocols gives everyone kind of a common language and foundation to respectfully and actually with the dignity of the human person to address things that need to be addressed that sometimes might be difficult, focusing on the issues and then working through what needs to be done in that safe collaborative environment. And then managing the resistance. Again, people are kind of like Newton's law of inertia, right? If it's at rest, it's difficult to move. And so that resistance, you really have to be aware of that and manage it. So collaboration is very important. The most valuable resource that all teachers have is each other. Without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. And so often you'll hear people talk about working in silos where people really don't necessarily know what's going on in any other section of the school. They feel kind of disconnected, left out of the loop, and that affects culture. So collaboration is always very important. So it's important as principals to set aside an intentional time for collaboration and learning. Make better use of the time that's already established, right? Eliminating the administrivia. And then plan meetings around the topics that impact students the most: faith, curriculum, instruction, assessment, and mission. And critically analyze your school schedule. Structure in time for collaboration and learning, and protect that time. And so as you're scheduling things, it's really important for you to explicitly express those expectations to protect that time for collaboration and learning, and that everyone understands that boundary, and that everyone on the team, secretaries, other teachers, people from outside, are really understanding that that time is preserved and it's sacred. So speaking of scheduling the time, you can design a master schedule to create common time for collaboration. Asynchronous learning time for students while the teachers meet. You could have a minimum day dismissal for students or a late start for students, and have required collaboration days. So prior to school starting, after Christmas break, and then after school ends in June. When the faculty is in collaboration, consider the types of agenda topics that you generate for that time. Make it relevant to what teachers are experiencing in the classroom, or use that data to drive what type of topics you use for professional development during that time or during that collaboration. So as we think about what those topics would be or how that agenda should look, you can ask yourself the following question: are you sure you want to spend valuable collaboration time on this topic? So if it's informational, could it be something that you put in a one-pager? Is it something that you could send prior to the meeting for people to read through and then maybe come with questions and spend some time on that? So think about, could this information be presented or acquired by the faculty and staff in a different way that doesn't use the valuable time that we could be using for collaboration? You want your time to build collective capacity. So as you're doing that, you want to think about, how can I develop a shared understanding of whatever it is that you are trying to build and change? How do I identify those effective strategies? And you want to spend time problem solving. Reflect on the implementation and then problem solve the challenges. It's really useful to think about what worked well in the process as you're reflecting on the implementation. Think about what went well. Write those things down. And then think about, what are some things that I would have changed about the implementation? And then as you're going through your problem solving, think about what went well, what you've done in the past that went well, and use those experiences to help drive and seek solutions to solve your issues or your problems. And so we know about professional learning communities. And so we're going to think about, what really is a PLC? It's an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. So in a PLC, there should be a relentless focus on learning for all students. There should be a collective culture and a collaborative culture and a collective effort to support students in adult learning. And a results orientation to improve practice and drive continuous improvement. So as you think about what happens in the PLC, structuring the agenda around those three pillars will help ensure that there is a framework and a structure that's going to continue moving the group along and looking at those results and improving the practice that you're focusing on or that you've chosen. So we are going to break out for a little bit in a breakout room. And while you're there, discuss what PLCs look like at your site. And then thinking about those three pillars of PLCs, think about what changes you could envision making that would, to your PLC, that would incorporate those three pillars. We'll have about 7 to 10 minutes to chat within the PLC.
By the way, I'm having some weird slowdown issues, so just in case things are a little bit slow, so you know. But other than that, we're good. Everybody should be back in about 15 seconds. Okay. You're good to go.
All right, welcome back. John is going to, now we're going to do a little transition. John is going to share the asynchronous tasks that you'll be working on before your next meeting.
All right, folks. So let's talk a little bit about sort of where we're taking this. So we have the chance to really walk through this idea of PLCs. And what we see in PLCs are a way for us to help build that collaboration, to help lead with the right drivers, to be able to impact adult and student learning by being attentive to the culture. And so our takeaway here, and the way we're going to translate this learning into action, is give you some scaffolds and some tools to really reflect on PLCs, but also be able to assess the extent to which to where our schools reflect those critical characteristics of PLCs. I'm going to share a window here real quick so you can take a look at this. So on LinkSpring, you'll see in cycle 2, you're going to see the Spark video. So where yours truly sort of sets the context here. And then the reflect, tinker, and grow pieces. And so the tinker piece, which is going to be that active activity. I just realized I said active activity. That makes no sense. So I apologize. And unfortunately, that's being recorded. Two pieces here, sort of where we're taking these learnings on PLCs and translating them into action. First one is a quick article for you to read and really dive through. And, you know, PLCs, much like differentiation, it's a term that gets misconstrued and misinterpreted very often. And so it's really important to really set the record straight on what do we mean by PLCs? What does it look like? What are those key characteristics? Is it a program? Is it something we buy and implement? And so you want to use this article, and part of our asynchronous tasks will be to dive into that article and then use that as a way to reflect on those critical indicators, right? To what extent are we seeing a shared mission? To what extent is there a shared vision, collective commitments, and common school goals? And so this is adapted from Solution Trees materials, and they're a thought leader when it comes to PLC practice in schools. So that'll be part of the asynchronous piece for cycle 2. That'll be available on LinkSpring. So if you go to the cycle section when you log in, you'll see this under session 2. My screen looks a little bit different than yours, but you'll be able to see the Spark, Reflect, Tinker, and Grow piece. Just as a housekeeping note, that article on drivers for growth will also be here on LinkSpring, as well as the recording for this session. All right. We are just at the hour mark. Leisha, I don't know if there's anything else you want to sort of add before we take our sort of stand and stretch and move break.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good to go ahead and take our break. We'll see you back at 10 after the hour.
Perfect.
All right. See you back at 5:10, folks. 8:10.
So now we're going to take a look at developing your faculty through observations. As you start to think about building your cohesive team, you want to start with thinking about who rather than what. You want to get the right people on the bus. You want to get the right people in the right seats on the bus. And you want to get the wrong people off the bus. Think about those right people that you want on the bus. You want them on the bus because of who else is on the bus, not necessarily because of where the bus is going. Stephen Covey talks about steel sharpening steel. So if you have people who are on your bus that have a growth mindset and they're always looking to grow their performance, grow their students, and really are always thinking about that improvement cycle, then that creates the culture of improvement. Those people are thinking about, all right, you know, what can we do to better our student learning? And they're working collaboratively to do that. If you have the right people, managing and motivating them, that time that you spend doing that is diminished. And the way that you know is that you're going to start gathering data through many walkthroughs. So keep in mind that a great vision without great people is irrelevant. So how do we do that? We do that through those classroom walkthroughs. Classroom walkthroughs are brief visits to the classrooms throughout the school, 2 to 5 minutes long, conducted on a frequent basis, and are informal and non-evaluative, designed to collect patterns of data that can help members of the professional learning community to continually improve their teaching. So as you think about this, think about the why behind the observation. If you're doing that mini observation, that 2 to 5 minute look, it's really not to pass judgment on the teachers. It's to coach them to higher levels of performance. Many observations, these walkthroughs, are not teacher evaluations. They're a method of identifying opportunities for improvement and supporting and sharing best practices across the school. So as you're thinking about this, it's important for your teachers to understand why you're in their room doing the observations. Communicating that to them is really important, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So as we think about the classroom walkthroughs, we have a different situation now. We have brick and mortar, so some of our teachers are in classrooms, and then there's some teachers that are teaching distance learning. Some may be hybrid, they're teaching students inside the classroom and they're doing distance learning, or they may be doing one or the other. At any rate, it's important for you to drop into those classrooms and see what's going on in there. So as you drop in, you're going to gather the evidence of learning. What is it that you're looking for? Targeted data collection that is used to determine the trends related to a focus. How often should you be doing this? Around 2 to 3 times a week in the classrooms to gather data around the focus. And then how long? For about 1 to 5 minutes per class, depending on the focus. As you're dropping into those learning environments, you're looking for those same things. So take a moment and think about, what does a classroom walkthrough look like in a digital learning environment given COVID-19? As we continue to think about those walkthroughs, again, we're going to emphasize that it's important to be present in the classrooms daily. It's also important to communicate the purpose of the walkthroughs, the why. It's important for your staff to realize that those walkthroughs are really designed to support them and to build their growth. It's an inclusive and a collaborative proposition that builds the type of collaborative culture that you want to see in your school. Without the clear communication, teachers may feel like walkthroughs are a dog and pony show or a gotcha experience. So as we think back to what those drivers are, right, we want them thinking about that the walkthroughs are building their capacity and the capacity of the school. It's not the accountability, right? So in order, as they think about it as being a growth opportunity for them, you're less likely to see the dog and pony show and more likely to be able to observe the authentic learning that's going on in the classroom. And therefore you can gather more authentic data to use to drive instruction. By increasing that transparency about your school improvement efforts, you can get the staff focused on the same goal and moving in the right direction. You want to establish norms with teachers and students in order to minimize the disruptions, and then determine how the front office will communicate your whereabouts. So take a moment and think about what the culture has been at your school related to classroom walkthroughs. Does everyone understand the why and the purpose of the walkthrough? Has that been articulated and communicated to the entire staff so that everyone's on the same page and they have that collaborative culture in mind as that's going on? Have norms been established with teachers and students to minimize the disruptions? And how does the front office handle communication about your whereabouts when you're in the classroom observing? So now let's talk about steps to gathering evidence. First, you want to develop a purpose or a focus question. Once you're in the classroom, you want to collect the evidence. So what do you see teacher doing? What do you see the students doing? And then you want to provide feedback to the teacher. So in developing a purpose or the focus question, what is the school-wide or department focus or an individual focus question based on the teacher's goals, what their needs are, their professional growth plan, based on the student data? Then you want to collect the evidence. Observe the students, the teacher, their interactions in the classroom environment. Record the data on a form. And it's always important to provide the feedback. Provide face-to-face feedback within 48 hours. Share the feedback form and focus the feedback around the focus question. Share evidence with the teacher and ask them to reflect and interpret it. What is the impact on student learning? Right, really reflecting on that. And then help teachers determine their next steps and have a follow-up conversation if needed. The conversation should really lead teachers to complete a self-reflection, a self-analysis, and self-direction to change or improve their choices as they teach. Following the conversation, send an email summarizing the key points and next steps that emerge from the conversation. So, quick summary. Provide teachers with the feedback within 48 hours. Establish a timeline for implementation of feedback, and then continue to gather evidence from the walkthroughs. That observation cycle will really assist them in starting to be able to gain the tools that they need to walk themselves through that reflective practice, because you're modeling it for them, they're practicing it. And so pretty soon it'll be the way that they think about their lessons every time they get finished. They're going to be thinking about, you know, what was the evidence that it went well? What are some things that I can do differently the next time? And then they're going to be implementing those and leveraging their strengths to get to the goal or the focus. Sometimes they may not be making the type of improvement or the type of growth that we'd like to see. And in those instances, teachers are going to be supported through a performance improvement plan. So you've identified that they're not making adequate progress on their goals. The teacher may be demonstrating some major deficiencies in their performance duties, or they're not responding to your observation feedback. So they're resistant to growing. So establish a timeline for implementation and feedback, and be sure that that's articulated and understood by the teacher, that you're going to be checking back in on them and that we're going to be monitoring their progress. In some cases, you may need to move to a counseling notice, and you're going to continue to gather that evidence through the walkthroughs. When you do a counseling notice, it's important for you to be clear, concise, and truthful. Be specific, relevant, and most importantly, timely. Be objective and draw conclusions from the facts. Don't use sarcasm, innuendo, or hints of a personality conflict. Include specific recommendations for improvement and clear warnings about disciplinary actions for failure to meet the goals. The first purpose should be to bring about the change. It's important to also realize that different diocesan offices have different progressive discipline plans. So be sure that you are following their guidelines. So review a sample performance plan, review the performance plan template, and review the counseling notice template. So thinking about what may or may not be your diocesan performance plans, think about that and answer the question, what is your diocesan policy? Is it a performance? Is it a progressive discipline? Are there certain steps that you have to follow in order to, before you give a counseling notice? And then how do you plan to use those resources? So take a moment to think about that. So as you think about your diocesan policy on performance plan and counseling notices, it's important to also really think about those conversations that you're going to have with your faculty and your teachers as you go through that process. That can be challenging to manage. And so I've always found it helpful to have a kind of a role play conversation with a colleague that's trusted. You don't have to necessarily share all of the details or who the person is, and you can still keep the person's confidentiality, but really thinking about how you're going to word what you're going to say, because you really want people to hear what you're trying to tell them so that they can grow and improve their performance. So let's go ahead and move to the call to leadership. We have talked about being a change agent, we've talked about being a lead learner, and we've talked about being an instructional leader. Now we're going to shift to close our session out with the role of steward. So the purpose of this portion of the session is to explore the role of the instructional leader and change agent, and to identify the principal's role with tuition collection. So you completed your cash flow forecast as an asynchronous assignment in Link. Think about how this was beneficial. If you would, enter your answer into the chat. So before we look at the sample cash flow forecast, I just want you to think about the importance of really managing cash flow. You know, people talk about budgeting and they will create a beautiful budget, but they're not actually monitoring the cash flow. So what is on the sheet of paper looks great, but what's in the bank account might not match. And so really being aware of the budgeting tool to help you monitor and plan, but really having to go through the process of monitoring the cash flow is really important. So we're going to take a look at the sample cash flow. So using the link, I think John is gonna drop a link. There we go. So let's go ahead and, using the link in the chat, access the sample cash flow forecast. So as you're looking at that, look at column C. What do you notice about column C? Okay, look at columns Q and R. Find columns Q and R. And using the data that you're given, think about if they're projecting to meet their budget. Which areas are they over or under budget? And what would be a potential action step to address those variances? Okay, look at row 93 and 95. What do you notice? What do you wonder as you're looking at rows 93 and 95? Okay. John is going to break you out into some small groups. And while you're there, you're going to answer these questions. So the first one, describe in 1 or 2 sentences the school's financial situation. And then offer 2 to 3 strategies to address that situation. So describe in 1 or 2 sentences the school's financial situation, and then offer 2 or 3 strategies to address the situation. Are they back? Okay. So as we're talking about the stewardship and kind of financial health of the school, it's important for schools to have a tuition and enrollment contract that specifies the following: their tuition and fees, the payment options, collection policy and penalties, other terms and conditions for student enrollment and parent guardian involvement, and then the contract must identify if and when tuition and other fees are non-refundable. So 2 critical points to remember about tuition and collection. A school will be as successful in the collection of tuition as its collection policy allows it to be. And whenever talking to someone about an outstanding balance, first ask him or her how much can be paid right now. And tuition collection is so important. It's because your tuition is your biggest income. Normally, it's around 80% of your revenue. And so if you're not collecting tuition from parents, then that means your cash flow is going to be affected. So what is your role in tuition collection? Every principal must be fully informed on the status of tuition collection. Tuition management services allow families to pay tuition and other regular fees through automatic withdrawal in bank accounts or other cash remittance agencies. This service reduces the need for the school to handle cash or checks, which requires heightened security measures. It also allows for an easier monitoring of that status for who was paid and who might be in arrears. Make sure that the parents, guardians are contacted when tuition is in arrears by 1 month, and then personally contact parents or guardians who, after 6 weeks, have failed to meet the initial request for payment and must inform the parents or guardians of the actions to be taken by the school if a payment is not made. If you're using a tuition management service, they provide real-time reporting to the school concerning whether families are meeting their financial obligations and allows the school to pursue collection from families who are delinquent. Whether or not your school is using a tuition management service, oversight of tuition collection is an essential requirement for your school viability. If you're not collecting tuition, you're not going to have cash to pay your expenses. So now we're going to jump back into a small group in your breakout. And while you're there, we're asking for you to share your school's tuition collection policy and process. Discuss what the benefits and challenges are of the policy and the process. And then talk about the penalties for late or delinquent tuition.
So it's going to look a little bit different. It might look a little bit different in your breakout room. So just a heads up, just in case you're surprised by who you're with. Okay, you feeling ready to roll?
Ready.
Okay, they're going to be back. When they're back, we're going to be on this.
Okay.
So put a bow on it, and then I will.
I'll do it quickly, John.
And I'll take them here. No worries. Okay. No, it's fine. You take the time you need, and whatever you give me, I'll.
And take a look at the participants too, because we have 3 there now, just so you know when our numbers are back.
Okay, here we go.
All right, welcome back from your breakout room. I've enjoyed my time with you tonight. Oh, okay.
Come back, yeah.
You tell me when.
You got 7, 8.
All right.
Okay. All right, welcome back from your breakout, and hopefully you had a compelling and productive conversation with your colleagues about tuition and tuition collection. As we close out tonight, just want to remind you that your role is multifaceted. You're charged to be all of those things within the leadership continuum. And today we discussed being a steward, an instructional leader, a lead learner, and an agent for change. I want to thank you for your time, and I really enjoyed participating in this experience and being able to be a part of the Leadership Academy. So thank you for inviting me, Kevin, and I had a lovely time, and I wish everyone the best in your future endeavors and your leadership journey.
It's great. I'll just take a moment, John, before you close out, to thank Leisha so much. We are blessed. We had Veronica Alonso from Dallas to be with us on our first, and we're so blessed to have Leisha Reese with us tonight to lead us. These are significant leaders in Catholic education around the country that we're having come in to speak with you, because they know how valuable it is to ensure that new principals get this quality level instruction. So I'm just grateful to Leisha for taking the time to be with us. So thank you so much. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
All right, so let's wrap this up. So let's talk about sort of where we go from here. So first off, just in case you missed anything, and for your reference, we'll be posting a recording of this session on LinkSpring. In terms of how to sort of take this and move this forward on your learning cycle, we talked a little bit about the article on PLCs, that PLC continuum. The final piece that you'll want to do between this session and the next session is that cash flow forecast piece. We had a chance to walk through that exemplar. It's a really good example of why that cash flow forecast should be a living document. If you remember earlier on in the presentation, in our time together when we started, we talked about the idea of ensuring that you bring other people into the process. And so if you're in the thick of working through the cash flow forecast, if you haven't started, if you are looking to update it, phone a friend. Right, so you've got resources, hopefully folks at your site that you can work with and that you can lean on to support you on that. So you'll want to make sure that over the next couple of weeks, and really think about this as a way to support your leadership, and then we'll build on this through the program, to take the cash flow forecast, put those revenues and expenses, right, move your actual performance over against the budget, update your enrollment as your schools are hopefully growing, and make any adjustments to projected revenues. And any adjustments you might need to make to expenses based on any new information you might have. And again, that task is to make sure that you can see and you can anticipate what your cash flow is going to look like each month. Are there any months where cash is going to be tight or negative, and how can you address this to avoid a cash shortage? Again, two big things as you're tackling this cash flow forecast piece. Number one is bring other people into the process, and number two, make this a part of your daily process. So if you're meeting with your pastor on a regular basis, or a business manager, or other people on your administrative team, invite them into that conversation. Create opportunities for collaboration to tackle this piece. All right. So again, those final pieces will be on LinkSpring. We will reconvene after the new year. Believe it or not, we will not meet until January of 2021, which seems so far yet so close.
Can I ask a question about LinkSpring?
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, are we when we finish assignments, are we supposed to be like uploading them? Because I noticed you can only upload one document.
Correct. So for the Spark, Reflect, Tinker, Grow pieces, those Grow pieces, you want to engage them and then hold on to those, because we'll bring those into our live sessions. They could be embedded into the PLNs or your one-to-one coaching pieces. So we're not asking you to submit those pieces specifically, but just sort of hold on to those and make sure that you've got those ready to go. You're free to submit them through the Tinker portion of each cycle, but know that that's not necessary. We just want to give you a chance to engage in those tasks.
And I have one more question about LinkSpring. There's also a section on there about like with the discussion board. Is there like any thought as to like, are you thinking we should use that? Is that just like a help if people want to share?
Yeah, and I'll let Kevin sort of jump in on this one.
Sure. And we were actually talking about that today. And I think we want to start to engage on that discussion board more. So we'll be checking that daily. So if you have questions or things that come up and you want to post comments there, would encourage everyone to check out that discussion board too, because we could even maybe post some questions and see people's responses. Again, we want to make sure that this is within the manageable part of your work life. We don't want to add burdens to you. So don't feel compelled to go and do things but we do want to make sure that there are resources and supports there if you need it. So we will be looking at that discussion board daily and be posing questions and things for people to comment on or discuss or share resources. It's a great way, it's a great place to really engage on those topics. So
Daniel, thanks for those questions. It's great.
Yeah.
Stuff.
And then
if you have any questions, go ahead, Kevin.
Good. I think, are you done, John?
I am.
All right. I just want to thank everyone again for being with us. And again, to stress. I said it after the first one, but we are here to support you. We have a great team. We had all 4 of our facilitator coaches on tonight. I don't know if we still have Val and Henry with us, but we had Tim McNiff and Lauren Casella with us as well. So we have a great team of support for you. We want to make sure that you're successful in your work. So if anything comes up, or if you've got concerns or feeling overwhelmed, please reach out, because we want to be there to help you be successful in your work. So, all right, have a great holiday season. Enjoy the holidays. Hopefully things can start to calm down a little bit within your school communities, and we'll see you in January. God bless everyone. Take care.
Stay safe, everyone.